Hello everyone, welcome back to The Budget Sportsman. Thank you so much for joining me on today's video. About a year ago, I posted a video comparing 3 different budget rangefinders and comparing them against my old trusty Bushnell Chuck Adams Bowhunter Edition rangefinder. Now when I made that video, I was really hoping to come out the other side of that video with a brand new favorite budget rangefinder. But as you can see, my old Bushnell rangefinder is hanging on like a hair in a biscuit. Now last year's contenders either had major reliability issues, they lacked features that I really wanted, or they had horrible ergonomics that I just could not get used to. So recently I decided to do an updated 2022 budget rangefinder video where I will once again pit 3 budget rangefinders against my trusty decade-old Bushnell rangefinder. With all of that said, let's dive into each of these rangefinders and see who will come out in the top in 2022. Before I get into each individual rangefinder, I did want to mention that in my testing, these rangefinders were all very consistent with their numbers. My test at archery distances always produced less than a 1-yard variation across all of the different models, and even at distances of a couple hundred yards, the numbers were very close. So I don't have any concerns about the accuracy of any of these units that I've tested this year. Let's start with my reigning champion from last year, the Bushnell rangefinder. Because I talked about this rangefinder last year, I'll try to keep it short and sweet. There is nothing particularly special about this rangefinder. It has a max ranging distance of 600 yards on hard objects and 200 yards on deer. It has a 4x magnification and it does do angle compensation out to 99 yards. It does not have a scan mode and it only reads out in whole yard increments. So with nothing particularly fancy about this rangefinder, why do I love it so much? Well, it's compact and it fits in my hand well. And unlike some of the other models, there's no focus wheel here to wind up being out of focus and moving when you don't want it to. It seems like every time I pick this rangefinder up, it's always there for me to do exactly what I needed to do and do it well. It's kind of like that old truck parked in your driveway that doesn't have Bluetooth or backup cameras or any sorts of bells and whistles, but it always starts right up and gets you where you're going without any problems. Next up, let's talk about the Halo XL600 rangefinder. Now in last year's video, I reviewed the XL450, and while it had all the features that I was looking for, it just had terrible ergonomics that flat out drove me crazy. Then I started to get a lot of comments on last year's video telling me that the Halo had an updated design and that it was much better. So when I came across the XL600 on Midway USA on a good deal, I had to pick it up and test it out. Now, to be clear, the XL450 and XL600 are basically the same rangefinder with just different maximum ranging distances. I happened to pick up the XL600 because it was actually cheaper than the 450 at the time. The XL600 does have a max ranging distance of 600 yards on reflective targets. The Halo XL series has 6x magnification, it has a scan mode, it has angle compensation, and it reads out in tenths of a yard. But keep watching for some of the drawbacks. My first impressions out of the box were actually pretty good. Halo had fixed 2 of my major complaints from last year. The first was the positioning of the eyepiece. On the old model, this eyepiece was about halfway down on the rangefinder, pretty much in the middle, and it just did not feel natural to bring it up to my eye. Halo fixed that this year by moving the eyepiece up on this model to the top. Now, my second biggest complaint last year was that the mode button and power button were on top and they were side by side, but it seemed like they were in reverse order. The mode button was under my finger I would usually use to range. Again, Halo fixed that issue by moving the mode button down here on the side of the rangefinder where it's going to be out of the way until it's needed, which in my experience is almost never. So, with all of the right features and some of my biggest complaints from last year fixed, the Halo should be a slam dunk, right? Not exactly. The longer I used this rangefinder, the more issues that I discovered. Let me start small and work to the real deal breaker for me. The first item is really being nitpicky, but this rangefinder does not come with a case of any kind. Now I understand this is a budget rangefinder, but it is the only one on this list that does not include a case. Now that issue leads me right to my second issue, which is this rubberized coating. Now it feels really great in the hand, it looks good right out of the box, but after you carry it around in your pocket for a while, because you have no case, it will pick up every piece of lint and dirt in your pocket and stick to that rubberized coating. Yes, it does wipe off, but it's just annoying. Now, I can live with those minor issues, but what really annoyed me is this focus wheel. Every time I pulled this rangefinder out of my pocket, it seemed like this wheel would move. It moves very freely. And so every time I would use this rangefinder, it would be out of focus. It didn't seem to matter if I had just focused it 5 minutes before. Every time I used it, it would be out of focus. Now, it may just be my unit because my brother-in-law has this exact same rangefinder and told me that the focus wheel on his unit is much more stiff and doesn't move when it's not intended to. However, the real deal breaker for me is the angle compensation. Now, on my Bushnell that I love so much, it really only has one mode where it will always show the line of sight distance followed by the angle and then the adjusted distance. The Halo uses two separate modes, one for line of sight and one for angle compensation. And while the angle mode does give you the actual angle in degrees, it only gives you a single readout for distance. So in my initial testing, I assumed that the distance it was giving me was the angle compensated distance. However, when I started comparing it to these other rangefinders, I quickly realized that even in angle compensation mode, it was still giving me the line of sight distance. I even went back to read the manual to make sure there wasn't something I was missing, and I couldn't find anything that I was missing. So while the Halo does give me the angle in degrees, I cannot get this particular rangefinder to give me an accurate angle compensated distance. Now, I do suppose it's possible that I just got a faulty unit, but for me, that's going to be 2 strikes in 2 years for the Halo rangefinders. Next up, let's talk about the GoGoGo rangefinder. Now last year, the GoGoGo rangefinder that I tested had a very clear display, a crisp readout, crisp response time, but it was definitely a golfing rangefinder with a flag lock function, but no working angle compensation mode for hunting. So when GoGoGo reached out and asked me if I wanted to test their hunting model, I was all in. This is the GS60 rangefinder. It has 6x magnification, a max distance of 800 yards. It reads in 1/10 of a yard increments and includes a working compensation mode. In fact, it reads very much like my Bushnell with the line of sight, the angle and degrees, and the adjusted distance all displayed on a single screen. While the GoGoGo does have a focus wheel like the Halo, it is much more stiff than the one in the Halo, and I didn't have a problem with it moving on its own. Now, another interesting feature of the GoGoGo rangefinder is that it's the only one in this year's test that includes a rechargeable battery. It can be charged by opening this little cover right here. When I first got this rangefinder, I noticed this button over here on the side of the rangefinder. As far as I can tell, it actually does not do anything. So upon doing a little bit more research, it appears that GoGoGo offers an upgraded version of this rangefinder that includes a red illuminated display. If I was purchasing one of these GoGoGo rangefinders, I think I would spend the extra $20 for the option to have that red illumination for those early morning and late night hunts that sometimes make it difficult to read a standard rangefinder. So what are the cons of the GoGoGo rangefinder? Well, about the only con that I had was that it's definitely bulky in the hands. It's a bit of a more squared off design than the one we tested last year, and it's definitely noticeable in the hands. Just feels pretty chunky in your hand. The only other very minor thing to point out is that the ranging button is very clicky. It gives an audible click and a lot of tactile feedback when pushing the button. I actually really appreciate that over a more spongy button. However, I did find that at really long distances, it was harder to get the rangefinder exactly steady on my target due to that slight bit of extra force that it took to push down the button. Again, that's being super nitpicky, but I did want to point it out. Finally, let's take a look at our last contender, the WoSports H-100. The H-100 has 6x magnification, it reads in 1/10 of a yard increments, and includes a scan and also a speed mode. Now, the really notable point of this rangefinder is that it has a max ranging distance of 1,000 yards. Much like the GoGoGo rangefinder in last year's video, this rangefinder has a flag lock mode that appears to be made for golfing, but it lacks any angle compensation mode that would be useful in a hunting scenario. So let's talk about the positives of this rangefinder. I would say the view through this rangefinder might be the clearest image of all of these rangefinders that I'm testing this year. The button has just the right amount of tactile click. It's just enough of a click to give me pleasing feedback without being so stiff that it's hard to lock on my target. The focus wheel is also stiff and stays in place very well. Much like the GoGoGo, it is a bit of a squared off design that feels a bit bulky in the hands. But the real kicker for me as a bow hunter is that lack of an angle compensation mode. So who is the real winner of this year's budget rangefinder comparison? Well, I think it is really going to depend on what is important to you. If you want a nice compact rangefinder with a rubberized coating that will clean the lint out of your pocket, constantly be out of focus, and leave you wondering if you're getting a line of sight distance or an angle compensated distance, then buy the Halo XL 450 or 600. If you want a super clear image with the longest max ranging distance that I've seen in a budget rangefinder, and you can live without angle compensation and deal with the boxy design, then the WoSports might be right for you. If you want a rangefinder with all the features you would want in a hunting rangefinder, including a red readout if you buy the upgraded version, and you can live with the bulky feel in the hands, then the GoGoGo might be right for you. But if you just want a no-frills rangefinder that fits in the hand well and will always be there and ready to do just what you need it to do, then you might want to get on eBay and look for one of these out-of-production Chuck Adams Bowhunter Edition rangefinders. As for me, maybe I just have a hard time saying goodbye to an old friend. But I think the Bushnell will still be in my pocket come opening day this coming hunting season. So let me know what you think down in the comments. If you have any other video ideas or comparisons that you would like to see, be sure to let me know. I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, remember to get off YouTube and get outdoors into God's great creation.